sound of the system, sound of the system. Sound of the system, sound of the system.
It's really funky. But it's really fun.
Get with it.
I think that this duo started back in the 80s. Now, they changed the sound of R&B by mixing electro, soul and funk. Today I have one half of the duo known as The System. It's my pleasure to be talking to the one and only Mr. Mic Murphy, the voice of The System. Hello, sir.
How are you doing?
I am good. Very, very good. And it's been
good to see you on this side of the pond.
Yeah, we've been talking over the phone over the last couple of months, you know, and it's been cool. And I know you came late, but you came here, and somebody blocked him in his drive. Or, you know what I mean? We're all ordinary folks. Somebody blocked him in his drive, and he still waited around, got the person out of the way, and now he's here. So, Mick.
Yes.
I guess the first thing we have to ask is, what did your parents have to say, or what did they have set in their minds for you as a career?
Well, let's see. I was a really great student, so my mom basically said, "Do what you believe in."
Yeah.
And when I was in college. I mean, I've been in bands since I was like 11 years old. I was in bands. I would play on the weekends in all kinds of different clubs. We were like the little Jackson 5 group that would open at a lot of dances and concerts. So I've really been in bands since I was 11.
And did you travel around a lot? Because you seem to have a lot of flavor in terms of can I say world music? Yeah, maybe world music. Seems to have a lot of flavor. It's almost like you traveled around. Did you have parents that was in the army, in the military or something?
No. I was born and raised. I mean, I was born in North Carolina, but I was raised in basically Jamaica, Queens. And I don't know if you know a lot of the artists that come out of Jamaica, Queens. We have a lot of rock influence. So we were listening. I mean, I was wearing bell-bottoms when everybody else was wearing, blind knits and shark-skin pants. I was wearing bell-bottoms. So I was really in touch with a lot of different kinds of music. Aside from the soul music that was out at the time, I was listening to a lot of rock style bands. I mean, even Motown. I always liked the music that was more psychedelic and more rock. Barrett Strong, which is two of my favorite writers, and a lot of Jimi Hendrix, Sly Stone, Rare Earth, groups like that. So I was influenced more by music, and a lot of it coming out of the UK. I mean, very early on. Oh yeah, I used to get this magazine. I think it was called NME, and I used to read about all the rock bands and the punk bands, and I mean, I was just really enamored of what was going on in the UK in terms of the style and, you know, the music, and the fact that in America, you know, when I was young, radio was very segregated. It was like you either did R&B or you did rock or you did soul, and there was no mingling of the styles. But when I would look at like the playlist on NME coming out of the UK, there would be reggae, there'd be Bob Marley, there would be rock bands, there would be punk. There was so many different melding of styles. So I was really attracted to that. And I sort of came up during the time, in terms of making records, around the time that Prince was starting to break through, Rick James, and they were both combining rock influence with soul influence.
Yeah. And you did a whole bunch of grassroots work within the music business before scoring a deal. You worked with Clear.
Oh,
that was one of the things you did. So talk about working with Clear. Was he their manager or road manager or something?
Yeah, what happened was their manager partner was this guy Dennis King, and Dennis King had kind of been a fan of my local band for years. He was, you know, he actually took us in the studio with the producer named Jimmy Douglas. I don't know if you know who Jimmy Douglas is.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
still going today.
They took my band. I had a band called City Function. Before that, the Soul Shakers, and a band called Sass. They took us into the recording studio in Washington, D.C., and we recorded like 4 or 5 songs. So he had been he would come to our gigs, and he was like a big fan. And as a teenager, like 14 or 15, he was a mastering engineer at Atlantic Records, and he would let me come up after school and hang out with him. And I met people like Mick Jagger. I sat in on sessions with Aretha. I mean, it was an amazing time. I could go in the studio anytime. It was when Atlantic Studios was still on, I think it was 50th Street, right across from, well, now they have the big center that they built, but it used to be, you know, 5 or 6 recording studios. Arif Mardin, all those guys would be up there recording. And I used to go after school and hang out. So I was kind of his protege, and he taught me the ropes, and he got his group Clear a recording deal, and he trusted me enough to take them on the road and look out for their behalf. And at the same time, I was working with the group Change and Little Macho Music.
And the whole Change thing, not just Change, but there was like High Fashion, BBQ.
Yeah.
All of them were
High Fashion.
Okay, they were all like a kind of an Italian invention or something?
Well, Fred Petrus was an Italian he owned record stores in Italy, and he and his partner Malavasi, who was like a musical protege genius, they teamed up and they started making these tracks in Italy and bringing them over. And at the time, they were looking for different bands and different singers to actually sing the English, you know, lyric and to be singers on the records, because they weren't real groups. They were only groups by virtue of the fact that they would make tracks and put a singer with the group. And after the success of Luther Vandross and Change, he was able to get a production deal where he was able to do High Fashion, BB&Q, Zinc, a bunch of different records. And it was during that time that my band, which was called Sass, I mean, we were probably one of the best bands on the East Coast, but we couldn't get a record deal. I mean, I didn't know anything about publishing. I didn't know why we couldn't get a record deal. And Fred said, well, why don't you come work for me? I'll teach you about publishing, and I'll teach you how to make records, and you can work for me. So I did. I went and worked in the Little Macho office on, I think it was like 26th Street.
And I remember coming over in that kind of period, right, when it was like, it was all about Danceteria, the Roxy, and Paradise Garage. And you guys came along, and you were the new school. And you did the electro soul. That's what I call it, electro soul, right? And you changed all of that. So it was all about Kashif, Howard Johnson, all those people, and you just came in there and I can't remember. What was the name of the song? Electro?
The first song we had was In Times of Passion.
That's it.
That was our first single, which basically the way I met David Frank was I was working with the group Clear. As I said, I was, working with Dennis King, and they had a couple of hits happening at the time. They had a song called You Better Get Tough, and they were getting ready to go on the road. So they needed a keyboard player. So Dennis one night said, "Oh, come with me. I'm going to go see this band, this singer that I might want to, I want to produce." So we went to this club on the Upper East Side to see this singer, and I was like, "Well, I don't really like the singer that much, but the keyboard player is great. Maybe you should think about seeing if you could get him in Clear." So we approached him, and David actually was the keyboard player in Clear on the Road. And it was through that relationship. He heard, when I was working with them, I would do everything. I mean, I was a road manager, but I would, if we had to get the gear on stage, I would do that. I mixed the sound. I mean, I did a lot of things for them. And somehow during that process, he heard me singing. So while you work, I was singing while I worked. And he said, "Wow, listen, I wrote this track. I have this track. I don't know if you'd like to come. Maybe we could get together and record it." So I went to visit him in this loft that he shared on 8th Avenue with, Madonna and a bunch of different other artists. And we met one day. He gave me the track. I wrote a lyric and a melody. We got together that day. I came back and sang him the melody and lyrics. He said, "Wow, that's cool." The next day we went into the studio and recorded In Times of Passion. And we worked until about 6 in the morning. We recorded the vocal, mixed everything. I got home about 6 in the morning, and I lived in my family's house. I lived in the basement. It was like a complete music den, mecca, posters on the wall. And I remember coming in and putting it on and blasting it like I had it as loud as you could possibly have it, with my concert speakers, My mom was great. She never complained about me in the music. And I decided, I said, this song is great. It's different. There's nothing like this. And at the time, I only knew 2 people in the record business. I knew this guy, Jim Delahan, who worked for Mirage, and I knew Ray Caviano. Ray Caviano had RFC on Warner Brothers.
Okay.
So that morning, I called Dennis King when he got to work, which was like 10 o'clock. I said, "Dennis, could you make me some acetates of this?" I took him the 1/4-inch reel-to-reel. He made 3 acetates, and I called the only 2 people that I knew, and I said, "Listen, I have this record, I'd love for you to hear it. Can you listen to it?" And because I had been kind of in the business and they had seen my face and I'd been around a lot during that time, they said, "Sure, come on in." And first I went to Ray Caviano. I played on records like, "Wow, this is great. I definitely would sign you, let me know. Let's talk later." So then the next meeting was with Jim Delahan, and I went into Jim's office. He put the record on, and he said, "Wow, man, this is great. Let me call Jerry Greenberg." Now, Jerry Greenberg at the time, he was legendary. I mean, he had signed Led Zeppelin. He was like the youngest president of a major label ever. He was like big time. So Jerry comes in, and he sits in a chair, kind of nods to me, sits in a chair with his back facing me. The record goes on. He turns around in the chair and looks at me and like this big ear-to-ear grin and says, you have a deal. Let's I want to make this record." So this all happened in one 24-hour period.
Wow.
So I leave the meeting. We didn't even have a name for the band. I leave the meeting. I called Dave. It must be 11 o'clock at this time. And I called Dave, and as soon as he answers the phone, he says, I've been listening to the record. Gee, I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna work. I think we have to. I'm like, "David, we have a record deal."
Giving me some love reaction. bodies move. We make our bodies move. I like the syncopation of the I like the syncopation of I like the way our bodies move. We make our bodies move. I like the syncopation of I like the syncopation of the I like the way our bodies move. We make our bodies move. I like the syncopation of the I like the syncopation.
In my dreams tonight, girl, I hold you tight. Won't you give me, baby, what I'm asking? Just say I'm kind and true. I give it all to you. Times of passion. In times of
Passion.
Just before we get on with the rest of that story, I guess your way into the business is actually a little bit more unusual than a lot of people's, because a lot of people want to, these days you stay at home, you make your tracks and you kind of shop them around. But you was, for want of better words, you was a roadie and then you was in the publishing. So what kind of grounding did that give you before you got the deal?
Well, I at least understood all the parts that make a record work. I mean, it's more than just making the music. It's actually having, if I hadn't been on the road with Clear, I don't think I would have known Ray Cavagliano or Jim Delahan. So I wouldn't have had that connection that I could actually go in and sit face to face and say, here. Because usually you send it by mail. I've sat in A&R people's offices and I've seen the boxes full of, and even now it's got to be worse because the media, it's so much easier to make demos, and then at least you actually had to go into a recording studio, you had to mix. Now you can do everything at home on your laptop. It's no big deal. So I can imagine there must be 3,000. So the first thing you have to do is you have to have a way to get your music to be heard by someone who can actually do something with it. Who can actually say yes. Not because there's always the guys who are blocking the gate between you and the guy who says yes. They have their own projects that they're trying to get on. So when you come in, even if it's better than what they have, they're gonna push it on the side and try to push theirs because they have a vested interest in it. That's just the reality of the business. At the time, before I started working with Little Macho and working with Dennis King and road managing, I had a slightly dreamy view of, you get discovered, you make a record, it goes quadruple platinum, and you become the Beatles. But once I actually was part of the mechanism, I realized how many pieces it takes to actually make a record work and to make a group work.
I remember Times of Passion. There was a record by The Quick at the time. I can't even remember what it was called, but I know. I Sing the Funk Electric, and it was a record that we used to mix with Times of Passion. It just locked.
Oh, really?
And it was an instrumental.
I gotta listen to it.
Yeah, and you just put the two of them together, and it had everything. All the changes were in exactly the same place as your record. So you just kind of stuck it underneath it, and you did a nice EQ, and all of a sudden you've got the vocals from one record and the bass backdrop from another, and it used to come out real nice. I thought I'd just drop that in there for you.
I gotta check that out. Weren't they a LA group, The Quick?
No, they were English. It was on Epic, so it was distributed by Sony.
Oh, I definitely got to check that out. I got to tell you, most of my influence was trying to combine American soul with British punk, rock, and electronic music. That's always been kind of my aspiration.
And so after the first record, now there was another record. I think, what was the B-side? It was an instrumental. I cannot remember what it was. We used to play that as well. It was Times of Passion, and anyway, we'll talk about it. Somehow we'll work it out. But after Times of Passion, what was your next record?
Well, after Times of Passion, Jerry called us into a meeting and said, "Listen, in Times of Passion did pretty well. I want to make another single with you." But this is where my knowledge of how the gears all fit together came in. I said, Jerry, listen, we don't really want to make another single. How much are you going to give us to make another 12-inch? And he said, like, some number, like, what was it, $20,000 or something. No, it was like $10,000.
Right.
I said, well, I'll tell you what, if you give us $20,000, we'll make an album.
I'm looking at you like you're nuts, right? Because that was in the days when there was no laptop and whatever.
I know, but because of the way we recorded, I mean, we were sequencing, and then we would just basically, we could do all the pre-production. We could put the song together except for the vocals and just kind of go in. And I knew what I could do vocally. I knew I could, if I had the lyrics and I had the melody, we could go in the studio. We could knock these.
You can nail it.
We could nail it. So he said, okay. So we went in the studio. We already had "You're in My System" kind of in the bag. Like we had started working on that, and I knew as soon as we came up with that, I was like, it's over. It's over. This is over.
Yeah. And
we went in the studio. We cut everything in like a week. I mean, we cut. At that time, you didn't need 12 songs on an album.
Yeah.
I think we had like 7 songs and an instrumental or something like that. We had a song called "Sweat."
Yeah.
In Times of Passion. I Can't Let Go. I Won't Let Go. You're in My System. Now I Am Electric, which was an instrumental.
that was the
Yeah, Now I Am Electric. We had about 2 or 3 other songs. Stand Up and Cheer.
Mm-hmm.
We had like 7 songs. We went in and cut it. And I knew You're in My System was a single because it just had the right.
Yeah.
It was electronic, but it was about
soulful.
Relationship. It's about love.
Yeah.
And it just worked. So that came out, and it just blew the door. It just blew the walls down.
Day by day and night by night, I see you in my mind. It happens all the time. My daydreams stop, my heart beats on. I can't take it anymore. It's you I live for. Oh, baby, you are in my system. I just want you to know that. Oh, you're in my system. Got me burning, burning, baby. Oh, you're in my system. You're in
say that that record was a very clever record at the time. I don't know if you designed it like that, because that was just when the whole hip-hop thing was just being commercial, because obviously it was around before that, but it became commercial, but it was all hard and b-boying, and it was that stance, and you just kind of gave it that edge that made it go to the next level melodic-wise and get with the people.
Well, I gotta say, David always was enamored of like hip-hop records, like straight b-boy beats and records. I wasn't so much, because I was more into rock.
Right.
I was thinking about David Bowie. I was thinking about The Clash. You know, I was thinking about Rick James even, because Rick James was, at that time, he was doing the punk funk, but I was like, wow, if we could blend what's going on in the UK with the electro music. You had bands like, what was these guys' name? Soft Cell.
Yeah.
You had things like that out at the same, and then you had out of Japan, you had Yellow Magic Orchestra. I was like, if we can get the right kind of funk on the electronics, we could blow the doors off. And there was also Gary Newman. I was listening to those kind of things, and so I was trying to combine the background that I had in the funk and the R&B, and trying to make the tracks have this electronic, more European, but then David was twisting it with the straight b-boy influence, because that's what he was loving. He was straight listening to like the equivalent, I don't know what the station was then, but Hot 97 and straight b-boy. That's what he was feeling.
In those days, it would have been, it was Red Alert, so it's Kiss.
Yeah, Kiss.
It was Kiss and Mr. Magic on BLS.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember, listen, let me tell you something. I remember when I used to be coming to New York and there was no West Coast. They wasn't trying to show no love to the West Coast. It was straight East Coast forever. It took the longest while until NWA came along. Right? There was no kicking down those doors, none whatsoever.
No, and it was strange because, you know, from the inside, it was like you'd immediately think that I'm checking for the hip-hop and he's checking for the rock and the electronics. But to be honest, it was completely the opposite. Because for me, the hip-hop was so accessible. I mean, I grew up in Queens. We were listening to Run DMC. They were like our neighborhood bar band. You know, they were like 10 blocks from where I grew up. So for me, it was like, yeah, whatever. You know, it's like, all right. So it was just a weird juxtaposition of styles, completely coming from opposite ends, that kind of, you threw it on the wall and it just melded together and it made something new.
Now the recording was, I know the sounds were pretty much, you know, they were exclusive to you at that point, because you turned the electronic stuff into melodic stuff. What kind of technology were you using to get the sound you were getting? Because it was brand new.
Well, actually, it pretty much started with the Oberheim sequencer, drum machine, and the OB8. And actually, In Times of Passion was one of the first ones that was programmed exclusively on that connection of instruments. And I know David worked on that, the sequencing and the blips for days. For days to get that. And at the time, I think we were one of the few. Everybody else was using kind of the what was the other keyboard? The
DX7.
No, DX7 came later. At that time, it was pretty much the Pro. What was that called? I can't remember the name of the keyboard. It was like there was the OB8, and then there was this one keyboard. Most people were using it, but David was using the OB8, and that was kind of the roots of what we were doing. And actually, the DX didn't come out until we did Experiment. Okay. When we had Experiment, then we had money to buy, you know, all the keyboards, or the Wave. We had everything. And we had Michael Brower, who, in my estimation, was like so essential to what we did with that album Experiment, which actually, in my opinion, was the best record we ever made, and I think it was the best electronic record ever.
Was that your second album?
That was our second album.
Okay. Now, for me, it's going to be a surprise to you, but my favorite record, and I used to play it because I lived in this place called Guernsey at the time. I lived there for 3 months DJing. They knew nothing about black music as such. It was very, very, it was all Madonna and stuff. In fact, let me tell you a story. I used to have to play Madonna Get Into the Groove so many times, and they had no idea about mixing. So what I would do is I'd take 2 copies and I'd extend the beginning for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. One day this girl came over to me and said, I have no idea what you're doing. She said, play that effing record and don't do that no more. And she was big, so I just played the record. But yeah, but while I was out over there and the album came out, I used to have somebody bring stuff for me that was out. So they brought me the album, and straight away the record I went for was Radio Rocks. I love that record.
My Radio Rocks.
I wish that it would have come out in the UK.
That was a Pleasure Seekers.
Which was the next one. Okay.
Yeah, that was the next record.
Okay, but I love that record.
Did you hear Experiment?
Yeah, I've got all this.
Experiment had Lollipops and Everything, which was, to me, the ultimate System record. Lollipops and Everything. I think that's the, and it had there was another Lollipops and Everything. I Can't Take Losing You. I Can't Stand Losing You.
Yeah.
Was one of those also.
I was watching other ladies. My heart went out to play. You know I never meant to hurt you, no, no. But I made a big mistake. I've spent so many lonely days, lonely nights. Oh, listen, girl, I still remember how you used to hold me tight. So I came back to ask you, please give me one more try. 'Cause I can't take losing you. My baby, I can't let you go. No, I can't take losing you. My only girl, turn you loose. And no matter what I do, I can't take losing. As long as there is me, and baby, I can't let you go. Your picture's on the wall, your voice still echoes in the home. You still have it on, but then I set it free. My curiosity got the best of me. I said, I've spent so many lonely nights. Oh, listen, girl, I still remember how you used to hold me tight. So I came back to ask you to give me one more try. 'Cause I can't take losing. You know I need you in my baby. I can't let you go. You know we can make it go back. I can't take losing. You know you be my only girl. Turn you loose, and no matter what I do, I can't take losing. As long as there is me, and baby, I can't let you go. I can't take losing. You know I need you in my heart. No matter what I do. No. No matter what I do. No. No matter what I do, I just can't face the truth. There's no more me and you. But with each new sunrise, my teary face turns dry. The hope of love shines through. Come back, 'cause I can't take losing. You know I need you in my baby. I can't let you go. You know we can make it go back, 'cause I can't take losing. And you would be my only girl. Turn you loose.
I have to say that it's been a minute since I listened to that. So, but Experiment was a great record. In fact, if I remember rightly, I think it was the first record, because it was kind of the way it opened. It was like an opening record. If I remember rightly, it was the first record on the A side, and it opened.
I just want to make you feel good.
Was that the first single?
Experiment was the first song on the album.
Yeah, first song on the album. Right.
I Just Want to Make You Feel Good was the single from the album, which I think was the wrong single.
It was okay, but it just didn't really. So hold on, I'm trying to remember. I Don't Run From Danger. What was that? I
Don't Run From Danger was on Pleasure Seekers.
Okay. See, that
we recorded with Tom Lord Alge, who was another, and we were pretty fortunate to work with engineers who were dying to be kind of raw and rocky. They were more rock style engineers than they were R&B. I mean, Michael Brower did the Change record, but he was really kind of starting to move more towards rock and delays and stereo. It was just a great time for engineers and groups. And Tom Lord Alge came right after Michael Brower. We worked at Unique Recording.
I was going to say, let's get away from your stuff for a second and go on to the stuff that when you work with other people.
Okay.
One of the records on today, when I was doing like a little bit more research, I was shocked but not surprised to find out that it was you guys that did Studio. Because when I heard it, I was like, this is not a Phil Collins record. It sounded like my exact description at the time. It sounded like The System and Prince. That's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
And now I've just looked at that 20 years later. That actually answered my own question at the time. So how did you end up working with Phil Collins?
Well, I mean, similar to Robert Palmer, he was listening to the System stuff. Then he was listening to the System, and he asked David actually to come over and work on this song that he had. And he was actually kind of shocked when David showed up, and not me. He was like, "Wait, are you the funky guy?" And it was David. So David ended up working in the studio with them.
Go for more of the people that you worked with. Squirty Politti, that was like just the weirdest.
Well, that was another example of working around Atlantic, and again, David and his relationship with Arif Martin, because at the time, we were really the cutting-edge sound in New York. I mean, we really were. We had created a combination of R&B and electro, and, you know, of course, David's keyboard mastery had gotten him into a position where he was working with Arif, and Arif was doing Scritti Politti, and he was using actually a lot of other cats in New York who were doing kind of R&B and cutting-edge R&B, and David, you know, he recruited David to work on Scritti Politti.
Okay, and I think if I remember, Pray Like Aretha Franklin, if I remember.
Woodbees.
I haven't got it written down there, but I think that's what it was.
Yeah, it was Woodbees, yeah.
And then you got Chaka Khan, who I interviewed not too long ago, and she had nothing but praises for you guys.
Yeah, well, it was a similar thing. Arif Martin was producing Chaka Khan, and we were making our record, The Pleasure Seekers, I believe. No, we were actually making Don't Disturb This Groove at the time. And we were all in the same Atlantic Studios, it was a great facility at the time. And we were in one room, and Arif was down the hall in another room, and we could kind of freely walk back and forwards, you know, to each of the studios at the time. And he came in and he said, "Hey, do you guys have a song for Chaka?" So we were like, "Sure, we have a song." I mean, we wrote a song like the next day. We worked on a track. I went home, wrote the lyric, and we came in the next day and played it for him, and he really loved it, and she loved it. So we were fortunate enough to get This Is My Night on her record, which it actually ended up, it was the beginning of HBO, and we were so lucky because HBO used it as their theme song for like 2 years.
Whoa!
Before they realized, hey, wait a minute, this is big. This publishing is big. Let's make our own thing. For 2 years, it was like the when they did HBO, it was like This Is My Night music was playing in front of it. So it was really, it's a good time.
Feel For You as well. Mm-hmm. Now, I Feel For You, I don't really know the full story because we didn't go into it when she was talking, so obviously you can tell me a bit more about it, but it had your trademark sound.
Well, I Feel For You was it was during the same time that Arif, we were all working in the same studio at Atlantic, and I think David played the horns on I Feel For You. He played something on I Feel For You. I'm not sure if he played the bass or whatever, but it was kind of Atlantic. There were 3 studios, and you could kind of walk down the hallway and hear what the other person was playing, and it was a great situation. I mean, it was great for us. And at the time we were actually working, Jimmy Douglas was our engineer. Yeah. He was engineering the recording for Don't Disturb This Groove. And I actually have to give praises to Arif because we were like wondering, wow, we have this middle section in the song, we don't know what to do. He was like, add a girl. Bring a girl to sing. So we wrote this B section with, we put a singer in the middle, and it really made the record shine.
And then now, once again, you don't always get the right information for everything you're doing, so you can tell me if this is wrong, but the influence sounds right. Mtume Juicy Fruit. Oh
yeah, Mtume was when we first made In Times of Passion. Mtume, he called me and he said, I just heard this record, In Times of Passion. I was driving through the Lincoln Tunnel. I got through the tunnel and I had to pull my car over to listen to it. You're onto something, you're killing them, keep doing it. So when he was working on Juicy Fruit, he called David and I to come do a session. I played guitar and David played keyboards on Juicy Fruit. And that track ended up being, huge, Biggie Smalls, it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. I need it. I need it. Oh, girl.
Every weekend you go to a club, you're not going to hear Mtume all the time. In the older section, possibly.
Yeah.
But old and young always want to hear the Biggie joint.
Oh, of course. Biggie's the man. Biggie's the genius. In my estimation, he's the greatest MC poet ever. To me.
Yeah.
He's the greatest ever. There'll be no more. To me, once he was done, it was over.
Okay, let's go there for a second because I am, my peeps know I'm one of the biggest rap fans in the world, and I have an opinion and all that. I think he was good. I don't think he was the best.
Who do you think was the best?
I think everybody is good for different reasons. Keras one teacher, Jay-Z is an incredible storyteller, very clever.
All I can say is one thing. You used to be a Reebok vandal. Now you wear Chanel sandals. I rest my case. Listen, you can argue whose style, whose voice you liked, but lyrically, and I'm a lyricist.
Yeah.
I love lyrics. I love the twist. I love the turns. To me, lyrically, no one came close. Other people had attitudes and other people had points of view.
Yeah.
But the poetry of his MC style,
Yeah.
to me,
You see,
no one touches
At
him.
long last-
I don't know who you can name,
No,
but
but
you'd be very difficult to.
yeah. You see, at long last, somebody's actually. He put me to task because a lot of times I can always win because they don't always say what you've just said. So, I might have to rethink how I'm listening. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think in that case, then Rakim would have to come a very close second.
Who?
Rakim. 'Cause-
Like I loved Rakim, and also it's funny because David loved Eric B and Rakim. He loved Rakim, but lyrically, I mean the lyrical poetry.
I think Rakim was definitely very
Biggie.
clever. Very clever.
The lyrical poetry of Biggie, you got to show me. You really got to convince me because I just think he was genius, and it was all off the cuff. It was not written down.
Yeah.
It was all off the head.
Yeah.
And to me, I came up in the era. I mean, I came from 1980, so I knew street game. I knew the MCs at the roller rink. I was hearing it from them. Sugar Hill Gang. I actually was a road crew for Sugar Hill Gang. That was really my first road crew gig with Grandmaster Flash and the Sugar Hill Gang on the road, going on the road with yellow school buses, on tour with yellow school buses. So, in my estimation, Biggie was the crown.
Say, don't disturb this groove.
Disturb This Groove was a great record, man. Because that was, I guess it was a ballad with big sounds. That's about the only way I can describe it. Because I suppose it's what we would call at home a mid-tempo record.
Right.
So it wasn't quite slow.
Yeah.
But it had drums and everything was knocking.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It was I think that was, it changed in many ways the course of R&B music. I mean, it was a big beat, programmed R&B song with passion and electronics.
Yeah.
And it was the first of its kind. There was nothing really like it. I mean, all the songs before that were like Shalimar with the band, and they were all these R&B songs, Peabo Bryson. It was like, I think it was the defining line where R&B went to another level of where it could be sequenced, and it was computers, and it was big chords, and it was Earth, Wind and Fire brought to 1985.
Yeah. And the record, it got to number one, it went to?
It went here in the United States, it went to number 3 pop and number 1 R&B for like 4 weeks or something ridiculous like that.
Actually, do you know how many records you sold?
I don't have a platinum record for it. I'm sure at this point it's got to be platinum.
By now.
I mean, and at the time they didn't count singles and 12 inches, and I mean we're very close to we should have a platinum record. I'm actually going to call them and say, can we get a platinum on this just because?
So, what about the actual your albums? How many albums did you record?
Well, we recorded System, we recorded Experiment, Pleasure Seekers, Don't Disturb This Groove, Rhythm and Romance, and so 6 records. That's the System.
But 6 records over what period? Because 6 records nowadays, I mean, look at, most people, because they want to be out there all the time, they're recording 2, sometimes 3 albums a year.
Well, don't forget, we also produced Angie Bofield. We did a number of groups in the UK. We did, and we produced a lot of records during that time period.
Can I just say?
Sure.
Angela Bofield, Getting Into Love is one of my favorite records, man. That was a bad record.
Yeah, that was a great experience working with her and Clive on her record. That was really one of the better moments. Also, we did Jeff Lorber. We did the Jeff Lorber album.
Fusion, yeah.
Yeah, it was Jeff Lorber during that time period, and we had a hit with him. Gavin Christopher. We did that record. We did Howard Johnson. We did Attitude.
Now, Attitude, okay, in our marketplace. In fact, just this afternoon I was playing I Want to Get to Know You Better. But the one that works for us is Love Me Tonight. Massive,
yeah, sure.
Massive
Cindy
record.
Hi, baby. It's been a long day. Been waiting for you. It's the edge of night. Come on, make it right.
I mean, we made a lot of records during that time, so we couldn't possibly. If we had just concentrated on the system, we would have made a lot more system records. But to be honest, the record business didn't. It was different then because you couldn't make 2 records in a year.
Yeah.
I mean, you actually had to fit it in the schedule. You had to record the songs, and we were trying to load the albums up with as many hits, things we felt were hits, as possible. And really, during that time, in retrospect, they never could really handle more than 2 hit singles on an album. The system wasn't equipped to handle it that way.
But I would say the people who are listening to us talking right now, take note of what Mick is saying, because I don't think you actually realise what you just said. It's the business, and you're in the business of music, so you follow a reasonable protocol, and hopefully, if you have the right records, then you get some kind of hits. And the other thing is, go where the hits are. Just because it's not happening in your hometown, if you can get a hit in Africa, do it.
Absolutely, I agree, and I think as long as you're passionate about it. And listen, people are always going to say no. They always will. And I'll tell you, even back to 1981 when we did the system, people were saying no. I remember playing "Don't Disturb This Groove" for Atlantic, because we would always do demos before we would make recordings. And I remember we had like 4 or 5 songs for that album, and we went into A&R meeting and we played the songs, and we saved "Don't Disturb This Groove" for last, because we were like, yeah, when we play this, that's going to kill him. It's going to kill him when we play this. And I remember playing "Don't Disturb This Groove," and it was like crickets. It was straight crickets. The only thing, the A&R guy who was the DJ, his name was Merlin Bob, said, I think we should listen to that one more time. Let's listen to that again. And we listened to it again, and I remember the record company saying, okay, well, listen, we'll put it out if you want us to, but I'm not sure if that's the one. And I was completely confident and sure that "Don't Disturb This Groove" was the record.
Now, is that because, not just because in your heart you feel it, because sometimes you do, I ain't sure, but when you was making it, did the magic feel, did you have that feeling inside that it was the one?
Oh, I felt it as soon as we started working on the track. I felt it. I felt, I always love to get music that's hard, with the lyric that's soft and passionate and that appeals to women. I mean, that's, to me, you in my system had that.
Yeah.
"Don't Disturb This Groove" had that.
Yeah.
Unusual, completely different than anything else that's out there. A lyric that's different and deep and different than anything else that's out there, and it appeals to feelings and emotions in women.
Right, so let's come back up to like the last album you made now. In fact, what's the situation between you and David? Did you kind of fizzle out? Did you have an argument, or you just decided
it was none of that. I mean, I think we made a lot of records, and we recorded a lot of songs from 1981 for 10 years.
Yeah. That's a long time to be recording together.
Yeah, 6 days a week in the studio, 20-hour days. Soon, I mean, to be honest, I think I didn't have any ideas that I thought were like great and fresh. And I needed a break. I really needed to take a break, and David decided to move to LA, and it kind of just fizzled. I mean, we still talk at least every other week, and we're still in touch. We still own, publishing and the catalog, so we're always getting calls, requests for songs, and it's just a matter of time and the right time to do the right record, and it's got to be better than anything we ever did. It can't just be a record to make a record. It's got to be better than anything we've ever did.
So when you did ESP, I have to admit, I didn't even know anything about it. Did you just decide to do something independently? Or?
No, we had been working with a Japanese producer, and he was working with the artist that we produced, who was kind of like the Michael Jackson of Japan. And he said, hey, you guys want to make a record? And we were like, okay, we'll make a record.
Yeah.
And we always have songs, and I kind of went out to LA and we worked a few weeks, and we recorded the record.
And now, what do you do now? Because obviously well, I wouldn't say obviously, tell me, but I think you handled your business correctly, which means that you don't have to get up and go and look for a job, but you was smart with your money and put it into possible businesses or whatever. So what do you do now?
Well, I did real estate for a while, and now I'm finding that my desire to create music is so on fire that I can't hold it. I can no longer suppress it. So I'm completely involved in recording, producing. I have a couple of artists that I'm working on. One is a guy named Chris Jackson, who is the star of a Broadway show called In the Heights. I've been working with him for about 3 years, and we're just starting to record his record. I have another young lady in Miami that I'm working on, which is kind of in the style, in the Madonna kind of vein, Lady Gaga, Madonna kind of style. And then I'm also working on my own record, because I finally have a direction that I know can work.
So, do you ever get calls from anybody who's around now that, for whatever reasons, because they want to sample, they want you to work with them, want advice from you? Are you friendly with any of the newer artists that are around?
I mean, we always get covers, because, I mean, our songs, Don't Disturb This Groove, I mean, we just, the MTV Music Awards, the band that played the live set played Don't Disturb This Groove. So we always get calls. I mean, we get a million calls about the songs we've done. They're being covered. Do we have approval? I mean, we own the publishing, so they have to call us whenever they're being covered. So it just happens that now electronic music is kind of coming to the forefront again. You know, there are more dance songs. There are more electronic songs. The styles have really changed. You have hip-hop artists doing disco. I mean, I call it disco. Whenever there's a 4 on the floor, it's disco.
Well, Jay-Z's got all on his albums as well.
Jay-Z. And, you know, Kanye. You have all these different... You have Florida doing, you know, these are really... they're really dance songs. They're really songs from the 80s updated to the style that's out now, which arguably is very similar to what was out in the 80s. And I think it's actually a really good time for what we did, the music we did, to have a resurgence.
Well, well, if you're around long enough, everything goes in full circle. And you say your parents say that, but that's true. Because to me, the ultimate right now in that style is Mr. Ryan Leslie. Everything sounds like it comes from the 80s, but he just got a little bit so that it doesn't quite sound old. You know what I'm saying? So there is no reason why you can't drop into something like that. And also we have something at home called Minimal Tech. I'm going to send you some stuff.
Please do.
Right? It's electro, but a lot of it just doesn't have any vocals. And they're great. If they had vocals on them, they would be hit records.
Send it to me.
Seriously, a lot of those records.
I actually have a single that I'm working on now called Nightlife that should be coming out in the UK pretty soon, that I did with some guys who were actually fans of the system, who contacted me and said, hey, come on, would you collaborate on a record? And I said, okay. So we kind of recorded it in one afternoon, and it's actually getting some attention from people that I played it for. So now I'm going to spend a little bit more time refining it and getting it right. But it's called Nightlife, and it's on Electro Avenue Records.
So bright in the flash of light, dance in the land of the everlasting night. DJ keeps spinning the tune, no man put the sun to what it's done under the light of the moon. Satisfy my electro soul, too hot to handle, too cold to hold. Mic Murphy, a diplomat, hit the track, shout, Lord, is on, do it just like that.
So flash, screams of passion, self-control, losing traction. Every action, there's reaction. Electro soul satisfaction. Walls keep turning, love keep shining. Fire in me keep on burning. When we're out here on the floor, nightlife. Take me high. I can't wait for the night. We need a healing all over the world. Streets could bleed emotions. We won't be disturbed. There's a magic in the rhythm hour. As days turn to darkness and the stars come out, take some time to free your mind. Let yourself be free. Let your nature shine. Takes a strong man to lose control. Come satisfy my electro soul. That's why I'm so satisfied. You make me high. You make my mind. I can't wait for the come alive.
Break it down like a beat from James Brown, the sound to make you throw down. Step up the game now, cause I'm better than them hip-hop fellas. When I come outside in the sun, even my shadow gets jealous. Hotter than a campfire at high noon to June. Perfume, bad gloom, making my head swoon, making blush like a bride in bloom. When we touch, I feel a rush stronger than Kush and bust rooms. Making love like we making papes, like we sipping the grapes, like we selling the lace, like we spinning the cake, like we splitting the take. I won't stop, but baby, I ain't got no brakes.
I can't wait for the nightlife, lost in the rhythm of the darkness, making electric sparks fly, making my feelings come alive. I can't wait for the nightlife, lost in the rhythm of the darkness, making electric sparks fly, making my feelings come alive. I can't wait for the nightlife, lost in the rhythm of the darkness, making electric sparks fly, making my feelings come alive. I can't wait for the nightlife, lost in the rhythm of the darkness, making electric sparks fly, making my feelings come alive. I can't wait for the nightlife, lost in the rhythm of the darkness, making electric sparks fly, making my feelings come alive. You make me high. I can't wait for the nightlife, lost in the rhythm of the darkness. You make my electric sparks fly. I can't wait for the nightlife. 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 I can't wait for the to get me high. Fire in me, keep on burning. Keep on burning. Keep on.
That whole electro thing, I mean, it's massive. One of the biggest artists is a guy called Calvin Harris.
I know the name, yeah.
Right. Now, he's a DJ who can keep a tune, doesn't profess to be a singer, but he makes 80s records. His first record that blew up on the scene, because he's been around a while, it was called I Got Love for the 80s.
Wow.
And that record was massive.
His name is Calvin Harris?
Calvin Harris.
Send it to me, I want to hear it. I gotta
The
hear it.
record, I mean, if you hear it, like if it was a great singer on there as opposed to an alright singer, it would probably, the record did go #1, but it would have probably more soul feeling in it. But he does great records, great records. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because the conversation you just said about all these stuff coming back around. As soon as I heard it, I was like, that's me back at Danceteria. You know what I mean? That's me. I was at the Roxy that night when Madonna was there, Flash was there, Bam was there, all these people.
Wow, yeah.
And I'm freaking out because I'm a little kid freaking out at these humongous stars. I mean, Madonna wasn't even a star then. She was just coming up. But when she had Everybody out, which is a very, very first record. And just to show you how weird that was, because Everybody was not a hit in the UK. I used to sell records. I used to be a buyer for when they used to sell vinyl back in the day. And we used to buy that record in from Sire, like Warner Brothers, and then I would sell hundreds of that to Italy. That's where it was a hit. It wasn't a hit in England at all. We used to sell that record by the bucket load to Italy. And then it was a minute before she had a hit in the UK.
Yeah, no, I mean, we grew up with Madonna, so we shared loss with Madonna. I know Madonna pretty well.
Yeah, all those that the whole scene there. It's kind of like, you don't want to be nostalgic about it, but you have to be, because it was great. All the problems we have now with the guns and the drugs. Yeah, there was guns and drugs. It just wasn't to the situation it was. But also, people liked music for music. Tell me what your take is on that, because there was no real MTV or no video to the extreme that there is now. There was no YouTube.
Well, you had to go seek out the music.
And it was your own choice.
You had to really love it to go find it. Now it's in your face, and there's only 10 songs in your face.
Yeah.
So it's, and if you're not in this, I mean, it's very cliquish, and if you're not in that 10-song click, then, it's hard to get on the radio. But, my theory always is that if you create something that's new, great, and different, they got to play it. I don't care what anybody tells me. No one can tell me anything different. If you make something that's new, that's great, unusual, they got to have it.
And the thing is, I feel you on that, and I it's not even. I expect it from you. That's what I'm saying. I expect it from you because I remember Mariah when that Glitter album, what was called, it just completely bombed. And then she came back with her next album. All it was bad choices. But, you look at Jay-Z. Jay-Z makes great choices. It doesn't matter whether you think he is or isn't the greatest rapper around, but he chooses records that work for him, and then he puts his stamp on it. You can't necessarily think of somebody else, doing Hard Knock Life.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah, of course.
Maybe they could, but,
No, absolutely not. That's him.
All right, so what's the next move, sir? And we need to get some stuff here because I'm gonna put your stuff out there. I want the new generation to know that there's people out there with skills no matter what.
Yeah. Well, it's coming at you, and I'm working hard on it. In fact, when I was working tonight when I came to meet you.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons I was a little late.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm really on the grind. I'm coming with it. I found my niche. I know what I want to do. I'm at it. I'm coming to you.
Mick,
all right.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, man. It's my pleasure.
Cool.
She's looking for a thrill. She doesn't care just what it costs. She doesn't care what it costs. She gets a foolish pleasure still.